Hi wrestling fans, this is Mad Matt Carter. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube. Remember, it's very important that you like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you like these videos. It really helps out the channel, and we appreciate your support. Thanks a lot. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Straight Shooting. I'm Mad Matt Carter, and our guest today is one Bill Holiday, AIWF senior referee for many, many years.
Many years ago.
Yeah, and so we're actually shooting this on the day of the 30th anniversary show in Mount Airy. Huge card coming up tonight, but I don't know when this is going to air on the network. So,
well, this happens to be the very first place I riffed.
Yeah, this is the very first place I announced.
I think we just about started about the same time.
Well, I'm going to get to that,
okay.
But I want to start off. Let's just jump right into it here.
Okay.
How did you discover wrestling? When was the first time you saw wrestling? What year was it? What do you remember about it? What promotion?
You're trying to pull back 50-some years, man.
Oh, okay.
I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and the first wrestling I ever watched had to be NWA, because it's territorial.
Yeah.
We didn't get the guys up north.
Yeah.
We always had to stay around here.
So you were in this area?
This area, yeah.
Martinsville?
Martinsville, yeah.
Okay, so you got Crockett Promotions.
We got Crockett's Promotions, and that's all I knew about. I looked at the Wahoo McDaniels, Olin Gene Anderson, Johnny Weavers, the guys like this for so long. I even saw when Ric Flair first started in. Johnny Valentine, not Greg, Johnny Valentine. Then they had that plane crash and all that stuff. And,
so you're talking about before 1970?
Oh yeah. And I watched those for so long, and then when Crockett sold out to Turner, I kept with WCW, and then the network started changing, and then you started getting some of the WWF. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. Pat McAfee interviewed Vince McMahon about the World Wildlife Fund and all that this past week, and it was funny to hear Vince react the same way as all of us did when that lawsuit happened. Like, what's the World Wildlife Fund? He had never heard of it.
Oh yeah.
None of us had either. So, but anyway, so yeah, it was very territorial back then. Where do you remember going to see your first wrestling match at? The first live, Greensboro. Okay, so you were spoiled right off the bat, because Greensboro always got the big cards.
Well, you got to remember, Martinsville is right between Roanoke and Greensboro.
Yeah.
So I was able to catch the shows in Roanoke, same distance as to Greensboro. And Thanksgiving, I don't care what anybody says, Thanksgiving, yeah, you have your meal. Thanksgiving was always Starcade.
Yeah.
So that's what we always look for. We always look for Starcade. Oh yeah, we're going to wrestle tonight. So I caught just about every Starcade there was, until they started splitting it between Greensboro and Atlanta.
Yeah, and that started in '85 was the first year.
That's when it started getting. I didn't appeal to me much. You sit there. I said I could watch this on TV, stuff like this. But I started fading out. But I caught just about every one of them.
Wow.
So
that was definitely the heyday of Crockett Promotions right there. And unfortunately, their biggest year was '86. Then the old expression, "the star burns brightest before it goes out," and that was kind of the case with Crockett Promotions. I grew up on Crockett Promotions too.
For Magna TA, that was one of the biggest stars coming until he had that accident.
Yeah,
I hated to see that.
Yeah, I saw Magnum the other week at Spartanburg. He looks well. I mean, he's a businessman now, and he still lives in Charlotte. And
it makes you wonder how big of a star he would have really been.
Oh God, it's no telling.
I would have loved to see a lot of matches between him and Ric Flair. I think I would have been.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
that's the same time too. Ricky Steamboat started in, and I think he just filled those boots, and you just see what happened to Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, Steamboat was a huge star for many years until he got hurt. He went to WWF. He started. He came into Crockett's in the late '70s. Left in '84 or early '85. Went to the WWF for a few years. Came back into WCW in '89. Went back to the WWF, and then came back to WCW and finished out his career there. I think he got hurt in '94, I believe.
Yeah, he had a match a few years ago.
Did he?
Don't you remember that?
The WrestleMania match?
Yeah. He looked good.
Yes,
looked
he did.
He looked really good.
When they redid Starcade in Greensboro in 2017 with WWE, we went. And they brought in a lot of the old timers. They brought in the rock and roll. They brought in Ricky Steamboat. Ricky looked up around the building and he was like, he's like, I've been coming here so long. I remember back before they raised that roof. They literally, guys, have raised the roof. And I remember when they remodeled the Coliseum in the early '90s. Yeah. And so, all right. So we talked about your fandom a little bit. What made you jump from just being a fan to getting involved with the indie scene?
Well, at the time, as I was getting older, you know, you get married and have kids, you can't do much at all. So I never got involved in it as much, and really didn't know much about it until the AIWF coming around Martinsville. Mm-hmm. Once they started coming around Martinsville, it just so happened my nephew started wrestling, and he told me about it. And that's when I caught the very first show. I think it was at the Boxing Center.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then it was at the Bassett High School for a show. That's when I basically got involved in it. Then I kind of noticed while I was watching it, they only had one referee. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, wouldn't he want any more? Because, you know, at that time I was mid-40s. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I'm too old to even try to start wrestling. Mm-hmm. So that's when I got with the AIWF and asked them, I said, you know, you need another referee. So, and I was trained by Don Hopkins. Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic guy.
Yeah, he was.
Miss him so much. But that's where I got started, and then it just went from there. And then Don, after maybe a year or so, he phased out. The next thing I know, I can't remember how many years it was. It was just me.
Yeah.
Just me.
Yeah, because Don got married, and then the next thing you know, he was gone.
He was gone. And I tell you what, I'll never forget Fright Night in Elkin. I think we had 13 matches.
Was that the first one in '97?
And I reffed every match.
Good Lord. 13 matches.
You got to remember too, Matt, when I got to the shows, my responsibility was to put all the sound system together, all the lights together. When the show was over, I had to take all that down, pack it up. Yeah. So 13 matches and tear things down, boy, I tell you what, that makes some rough nights.
Yes.
Enjoyable though. I mean, we got some great shows.
That was the night, that Fright Night in '97, I believe, where the fire marshal came in and told us we couldn't let anybody else in the building. Yep. Because it was standing room only. And and I know you guys that watch and listen to wrestling podcasts, you always hear people talk about, oh, it was sold out, standing room only, whatever. No, if we're talking about a show and we drew 6 people, I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not going to give you attendance figures for anything.
We've had those.
I'm not going to give you any attendance figures for anything that we're doing right now. Maybe 20 years from now we'll talk about it, but I don't mind going back there and saying it. And the first time I went to Elkin was at the beginning of 1997, because my first show was, like you said, here at Veterans Park, just like you. Right. Mine was December '96, the Saturday after Christmas. The second show we did was the very next weekend in Elkin, and it was 6 people there.
Yeah.
So to go in the same calendar year from drawing 6 people, and we had the show. We didn't cancel it. We went through it, and to have that many people in the building, and I think it was close to 300, maybe over that.
I remember back in the locker room and come out and says, we have no more chairs. So we had to basically take all the chairs out of the locker room, and basically everybody was sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
And you know, most people will be upset, but when you get wrestlers back here and they're out of chairs and have to take their chairs, you know, their eyes light up. They know it's going to be a good crowd.
Yeah.
They always like to have good crowds.
Yeah, and you will not believe this, but just unearthed this morning from the archives, Deal with the Steel '97. Oh, it has been found and is being digitized. Yes.
I've got some on DVD. I've got to see if I can find those things, because I had some tapes of just about every show. I'm trying to put them on. Like some of those shows, people really, I mean, we need to get them on there.
Yeah, and I'd like some for my private collection too, to be honest with you. So maybe we can negotiate a price after.
We can do some digging.
Yeah, we can find out what you got. But yeah, so anyway, we go into like '97, and a lot of people don't remember this too. Is Rick Diesel came to Martinsville and got that TV presence going up there, but we had a TV presence down here too in Mount Airy. Right. Remember, Billy would come with me a lot of time on Thursday night to do the show down here at the old MATV, which is down defunct, you know. But Star News is still around in Martinsville,
right?
And I, you know, for those of you in Martinsville, you know that every now and then I'll get a wild hair and call Charles up on and talk on the 7 o'clock show. But we had a great presence up there, a great television presence.
Really, really strong in that area.
And you know, but the one thing that was always weird to me was, and I think it was a combined, because we had TV in Mount Airy, we had TV in Martinsville, and right in the middle was Stewart. And it always seemed like when we were running up at Rotary Field, we would draw, especially in '98, deal with the steel. We drew these massive crowds up there.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it wouldn't always be that great. You know, sometimes you go up there, depending on the weather. If it was during cold weather, you might get 30, 50 people. But a lot of times we went up there and it'd be a couple hundred, you know.
Yeah, it would be packed. It would be crazy. I mean, because, like you say, the guys in Stewart had it both ways. About the same distance from them to go to Stewart to Martinsville it would be them up here in the Mount area. So, and you know, so yeah, we had a good crowd there. So, and they was able to follow us. I don't know if the cable network was up there watching or not, but you know, they still got it. And once we started running shows up there, and they see the caliber of the wrestlers and the talent we had there, I believe that kept bringing them out.
We papered the town pretty heavy, but we would also put the Stewart posters in like Bassett and Martinsville.
Right, but you got to remember, it's not a whole lot of places you can poster up there in Stewart. I mean, it's not that big of an area. But whatever happened, I think after we started getting those first few shows and being able to televise the next, announce the next shows coming up, I think that helped us a lot.
Oh yeah,
and we did make it a regular run up there.
Yeah, we did. And one of the tricks we used to use, for those of you out there promoting now, if you're running the same building a lot, we would say, like, if your normal, let's say back then our normal general admission was $4, and we would say, okay, we'd tell them at intermission of the show, the same tactic they used to use in the territories under the NWA. At intermission, they'd be like, hey, you know, we're going to be back here in a month. If you want to go to the box office, we'll knock off $2 off the ticket for next month. And what did you do at intermission? Went to the box office, got tickets for next month, got a soda and popcorn, went back to your seat. You know, and so it worked real well for us. We got kicked out of Rotary Field after Terminator X's head went through the wall there. I understand the hole's still there. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't been there, but I have a feeling it is. I knew for a few years it was.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was having some rough matches. We even had the flaming chair there, and that was awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to find that little piece of business. You know, when Brian Danzig dropped Terminator X's face first on a flaming chair.
We still have the picture, and whoever was taking the pictures that night took
Jackie,
just right in action. I think it was a great picture.
Jimmy Valiant, Boogie Woogie Man.
Legendary Boogie Woogie Man.
Wait a minute, baby. Wait a minute. Hang on.
What are you doing around
What was that calling you, buddy?
This is our neighborhood.
You done
This is
made
a young
a
man's
mistake.
game.
You should be retired, Boogie.
Wait a minute, boys. Let me take a bite of my king dog.
You say King Dog?
King Dog?
Is that what you said?
What? What happened? Come on, boy.
Don't let hunger bully you. Get yourself a king dog, and you too can become a super hunger fighter.
And that's when I learned that I had to call the action on the monitor, because camera lady Denise was above us shooting down into the ring. And it was a lumberjack match, that match was, if you remember right. And the lumberjacks were surrounding us. And so when the wrestlers were standing up, I could see them just fine. But when they were on the ground, I couldn't see because the wrestlers at ringside were blocking. And although there's a clear right here, I'm calling what I'm seeing with my own two eyes, which is a big no-no in broadcasting. But I'm just telling you this story because this is how I learned it. When Brian hooked Tony for that move, I saw the smoke coming up and a little flicker of the flame, but I didn't realize what he was doing. And as Brian drops Tony, you hear me make the call, the ring is on fire, because I couldn't see. And then that's broadcasting 101 for you that want to get into sportcasting. Call what's on the monitor, because the people at home cannot see the same thing you see. Right. So watch the monitor so you can call what they see. But yeah, that was a wild night too.
I mean, it was a wild night. War, West Virginia.
Oh yes.
That had to be at least, what'd you say, 400 people?
300 or 400 people, yeah. And the first time we went up there, well, the first two times, I remember going to two shows up there. And the first one, we made the mistake of setting up our broadcast position at the top of the bleachers so we could overlook the crowd. Now, that gave for some excellent wide shots of that huge crowd, right? But you really couldn't see the blood and guts in the ring. You know, and we learned, but we moved down to the second one. That first time we went up there, I don't know that I had ever seen a crowd like that for wrestling that I worked on the show.
Well, what surprised you though, because you know, as normal, you know, we got up there early, and there was some flyers and posters out, but we actually had a lot of guys, wrestlers, and people in the wives drive through town just hollering and announcing. But if you drive through the town, it's a very small town.
Very
small. You would figure when you saw
ever seen the Orange Sky, what is that, the Orange Sky movie where the kid is amateur rocketeer? Yeah. October Sky. It's based there in that town in War, West Virginia.
And just riding through town and looking, you would figure we might get 50 people there.
Maybe.
But the word got out so fast, and I tell you what, that gym, that backside of the gym was just packed. The floor was packed. I don't know about the side you guys were sitting on, but I know the side opposite the camera where everybody wants to sit. The whole gym was packed. Yeah, it was an awesome show.
It was a good crowd. And Terminator X and JT Sledge stayed overnight and partied with the locals. And then one of the things that we did, and you don't turn your nose up at me at home for saying this, but one of the things that we did, we ran at the beginning of the month, which is critical because if somebody is on the doles, as they say, that's when the checks come in.
That's right.
And don't turn your nose up at me. Jim Cornette's talked about this on his podcast too when he was running Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That was a known tactic. That's what you did.
When you run small areas, that's what you had to do. Mm-hmm. You had to make sure you did that.
Because if you went up there at the end of the month, I mean, we found it out. We went into Welch one time at the end of the month and didn't draw a diddly squat. And then we went back the second time. We revamped our broadcast position. Rick Diesel had recently put the family back together. Remember that? And that was the night that we didn't know if Luscious Kevin, Sergeant Stryker, for those of you, was going to make it out of there alive. Because he came out, a lot of things happened that night. First off, Jackie Anderson, the Ghost Rider, got the microphone, went out there before the show even started and told the people in West Virginia what he thought about them, which...
We put some things, don't say this, don't say this, don't say this.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you can do to a heel in wrestling. Tell them, you don't say this.
Yeah, because he went out there and said everything.
Yeah.
Jumpin' Jimmy went out there and told that why do birds fly upside down in West Virginia joke, which did not help matters easy. And then when Kevin came out there wearing that pink spandex, coming out to Tone Loke's Wild Thing and grinding his hips in front of those people, they were ready to ride. And I thought, I didn't know if he was going to make it out of there. But the funny thing about that was, here we are an hour after showtime. We're putting the ring back on a truck. And we can hear, like Deliverance style, if you've ever seen that movie, people in the woods across the river yelling, Luscious Kevin's going to die in War, West Virginia tonight. Luscious Kevin ain't going to make it out of here alive. And we were all scared. We were like, oh man, because that town was so far back in the hills. They needed to, not only did they have to pump in sunshine, but you were a good hour away from 77 on winding, narrow mountain roads. Yeah. So it was a task to get in and out of there.
Actually, the truck broke down coming in at first. Broke down, and they ended up having to get another U-Haul to come and change equipment over and got there really late. So, yeah, we like a lot of adventures, especially in the Indies.
Yeah.
A lot of adventures.
Well, I like it now so much better as I'm older now, as we all are. You know, here in 2020. We have settled in the Veterans Park in Mount Airy. We don't really burn the roads up anymore. You know, all the indie promotions like have one place that they run. So it's not really like you having to pick up the ring and tote it all over the place. And I mean, there's some part of that I miss, but I'm telling you, the older I get, don't miss the travel. I like coming to Mount Airy and doing the show. And
that's one thing that really got to me because, like I told you, my job, what I've done for the AIWF, and you know, we're just talking about Mount Airy, we're talking about Bassett and Martinsville area and Stewart, but you guys we got the West Virginia with the Tennessee, all over. I mean, so Reidsville. Yeah. So we went a lot of distance. So you know, your weekends were basically shot because me particularly. After a few years, I was almost like, as soon as I got home, I got to bed about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. A lot of times I couldn't get out of bed the next day.
Yeah.
And especially when I'm just so sore and tired and sore mostly.
Yeah.
That's a lot of getting up and down. You know, I wasn't 20 years old. At that time, I was probably right at 50 years old. So, yeah, there was a lot of getting up and down. It kept me in shape for a while.
Yeah. And it's, I remember that. We'd run Mount Airy, Elkin, Stewart, Martinsville, Reidsville, Smith Grove down there on the other side of Winston. We would run North Wilkesboro from time to time. That's always been a good drawing town. I'd be interested to see if wrestling can go back in there now and still do anything. Because even when we were going there, 97, 98, 99, it was after the Speedway closed.
Right.
And we were still drawing good crowds.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Speedway is going to reopen soon. And so it's only going to be a matter of time. I mean, they've already passed the legislation to run water and sewer lines out there. So it's only a matter of time. I would be interested to see, if you ride through North Wilkesboro, what's crazy about North Wilkesboro, well, not North Wilkesboro, but the town of Wilkesboro itself, is right after the Speedway went away, those first few years, it was just like a ghost town. Like all the stores in the mall closed up, everything. But if you go riding through there now, there's restaurants, shopping center, even after Lowe's headquarters left, which was a big blow to them when they moved to Mooresville. That's a big blow to them, but the town is, I don't know how they've done it. It's revitalized. It's a bustling little place. And
when that main thing, it's just like Martinsville, Virginia, where I live. If we was to lose the track in any races, then that whole town will do the same thing. But it'll come back. It'll always come back. Something will bring it back.
So if we hear the noise in the background, it's various people sticking their heads in the office here that we're filming this in. But you know, hey, this is the AIWF. You got to deal with that. No. So yeah, you talk about Martinsville. You know, I left Martinsville back at 14 and moved to Concord and everything. And I'm gonna tell you what, me as a wrestling fan has been a resurgence in my fandom by moving closer to Charlotte. Because it's the center of the universe. One of the first things I did when I got down there was figure out where Crockett's old office was and drove down there. And I can tell you where it's at today, you know. Then I heard about a steak restaurant on Arn Anderson's podcast that Arn Anderson likes to go into down in Charlotte because he still lives there, called Beef and Bottle. Been there once already. I'm booked to go in there in a couple of weeks when the in-laws come in from Arizona. So, and the cool thing is, you know, me being a race fan too, racing and wrestling are my two favorite sports. Football is a close, racing and wrestling are tied at first, and football is a close second. But living in Charlotte, I can go 50 miles in any direction on any Saturday night and find wrestling or car racing. So it's like being in heaven to me. And I've been able to do more historical research because of all the different newspapers around there and all that kind of stuff. And like I've actually visited the building that Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson won the world title from the Rock and Roll Express in 1987. I know where that's at, you know.
See, that's what surprised me. It's like I've said, I lived in Martinsville practically all my life. I lived in the States from North Carolina for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, back in the
heyday down there, I believe.
Yeah, heyday, you know, you had Roanoke and Greensboro. I've always said Martinsville lost out by not having some kind of place to hold the NWA because they could hit Roanoke, Martinsville, Greensboro. But they never did. They never built any kind of small coliseum.
No, I never knew why they didn't do that. Did they finally build one uptown? They never got that built because I knew when the new soccer complex came along, they were talking about building a civic center. Never happened. Okay, unfortunate, but again, that's part of the reason I left. No offense, Martinsville, I love you. You're my hometown. You know, don't anybody call up Charles Rourke and say I was bad mouthing my hometown. And I still go up there for the race twice a year. So,
oh yeah, I see you post every now and then up on the track. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got to do the obligatory hot dog post because Mark Childrey and I. Back and we're going to get off wrestling a little bit. We got to kind of go to Cable 6 history, Star News history for a second here. Mark Childrey, the lead anchor at WGSR in Reidsville, and I have always had a very good relationship. The guy is hilarious. I mean, he's a newsman, I know, but he could easily transition into stand-up comedy if he wanted to. When they changed the Martinsville Speedway hot dog, Mark and I had a field day with that, and we ended up calling it on social media the Great Martinsville Speedway Wiener Debacle of 2015. And so when they went back to Jesse Jones, you know, we had all said, oh, okay, everything's settled. So if you see me posting on social eating a hot dog at Martinsville, it's this whole backstory. But that was a big deal amongst race fans. So your fandom now, Bill, Rick Diesel and I talked about the state of modern wrestling. I will say, I went to a WWE show recently in Charlotte as well as an AEW show. Charlotte wrestling fans are great. They remind me of the old days, like in Greensboro and stuff like that. Very polite, but they want to see good wrestling. And if you give it to them, they'll make all the noise in the world. You know, I mean, I thought Roman Reigns and the Usos were going to start a riot down there that night when they came out. You know, and a lot of people online are like, oh, Roman Reigns is so awesome or whatever. To that crowd, he was public enemy #1, and they were ready to kill him just when he walked out. He hadn't done anything.
Well, when that happens, as you know, that means the wrestler done his job.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get the crowd involved somehow. If it's being a baby face or a heel, you want to get that pop for the baby face, and you want that from the heel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think, honestly, is missing a lot of now, especially in some of the shows you see. You don't get that much anymore because now the crowds are dictating everything. It's like you got a bad heel and the crowd's like them. And prime example, you know, they wanted Stone Cold Steve Austin to be one of the biggest heels, which he was a heel, but everybody loved him.
Mm-hmm.
So those days back when I was growing up, you could tell the heel from the baby face. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it basically boils down to we need to put a good show on.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss a lot of the good action, which AIWF did. We always had a lot of little entertaining stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But we specialize more in the wrestling, and it seems like some of the events and stuff is doing more of the entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Which it has been that way for a long time.
Yeah, he handicaps his wrestlers a lot of times. You can't do this, you can't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah.
And they got to try to do the best they can with what they're able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the difference in AEW. They're more open to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this: we went to it in the WWE show. Between the ropes, they have the finest wrestlers in the world. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you go to a live event or house show, whatever you want to call it, you're gonna have a good time, especially if you're in this part of the country. You know, because people around here still they're not. Philly fans are Philly fans. They've always been Philly fans. Philly fans do whatever they want, and they're not bad.
Yeah.
Chicago fans are good too, but there are a lot of places you go in this country where wrestling shows will go in this country, and the audience will intentionally sabotage the show by booing the good guys and cheering the bad guys.
Yep.
Not the case in Charlotte. If they know you're a bad guy, you're getting booed, whether they like you or not. You might hear some applause, but there's boos, and everything's fine between the ropes. AEW, however, on the other hand, got a long way to go, and I wish them the best of luck, because we went to that at the Bojangles Coliseum, used to be the Charlotte Coliseum. I was talking to Rick Diesel about this. Battle of the Belts. First match on the TV show, Sammy Guevara, Dustin Rhodes. Place was going crazy. It sounded like the NWA days.
Yeah.
People, girls screaming for Ricky Morton. Deafening. The rest of the show, polite applause. I know Tony Khan's got a lot of money, but they've got a long way to go. And I would love to see him get Arn Anderson or Kevin Sullivan to book that. I think they'd do really well. But you know,
with
them money, so.
them losing Cody too, so
Yeah.
I think that's going to hurt for a while there. It almost reminded me right now of some stage of WCW.
Yeah.
Because they don't have. That's the only thing about Vince. He's always has that direction. You know, you do this, and I don't know how AEW, who's booking the shows, who the bookers are, how they work it, but they do need some of the old, experienced guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they can just get that direction, Vince is going to have his hands full.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I think that I think competition is best for everybody.
It is.
And
It
as soon
definitely
as I want to see AEW get their act together, because if they can get where they can consistently run good TV shows week after week and really make you want to tune in, then WWE is going to get better. Then the indies are going to get better. You know, there will be a sense of competition again. And I don't know if it'll ever get as big as it was in the late 90s, but, you know, because wrestling is such a niche audience now.
You did hear that AEW did purchase.
Yeah, the Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
They got the whole library, the whole promotion, everything. So, and Ring of Honor is funny, you know, talking about Charlotte, Ring of Honor will come down and run some of the old buildings that the Crockett's used to run. You know, MLW was up there last weekend. They ran the old Park Center, which is called the Grady Cole Center down there. Crockett used to run that on Monday nights, going back to the freaking 40s. You know, so, and that was really cool. That's another thing I love about Charlotte, just wrestling fans, heaven down there. But, so what do you see, like, it seems like now every town's got an independent. The AIWF has been around for 30 years, but with the exception, certainly not the rule. Do you ever see any time in the next 5 to 10 years any way that wrestling could become more mainstream and like it was in the mid-90s, where, you know, I don't know, there's more channels on TV now, so getting a 5.6 or a 4.5 rating for a wrestling show at this day and time is probably never going to happen again. But do you see any way that it could become more mainstream and more, well, like, because I know wrestling's kind of always been like a dirty little secret that TV stations will put on at 11:30 at night, even back in the heyday, you know. Do you ever see a way it could be more mainstream like it was in the late 90s?
Well, you've got to understand, back in the late 90s, wrestling was a secret. I think what hurt it to a point was where people now, you know, when they talk about wrestling, they go, oh, it's fake. I can guarantee you right now, I don't care what anybody says, I've been with this since '94. It's scripted, the guys know it, but when they go out there and they take the bumps, they take the falls, they take all this, the abuse, there's nothing fake about that. And you also got to remember, these guys are out there to perform and entertain. That's basically what they're there for. And I think that's it's going to take building the crowds to understand that. In the indies, the only problem you have is nowadays, back in my day, we had wrestling one day a week. You know, I was that way for that. Now you can just about every day of the week you find somebody. So
that's why we do our Thursday night show, because that's the only night there's not wrestling.
Right. So you got to sit there and think about it. What would it be like if you had football every day of the year, every day? People get burned out on it.
They've oversaturated the market.
Right, they do. I think that's what it is. And I think back in my day, they only had like one pay-per-view, and that was Starrcade. Then they started adding more pay-per-views and more pay-per-views. Next thing you know, you have one every month.
Yeah.
Now I think sometimes it might be 14 a year now. So that's too saturated for it to really build. But you still, as long as I think, if you get the talent out there that will perform and you're able to let them do what they can do best and not handicap them, I think it has a chance. It does. But I don't think, my opinion, I don't think we're going to see the 90s.
Yeah.
Because back in them days, I mean, you didn't have the stuff going on like you do now, and it was pure wrestling.
Do you think guys like Jim Cornette have, and he comes to mind first because he was one of the first ones to do a wrestling podcast. You know, he always talks about, well, the horse has left the barn. But where he gets on there and discusses the intricacies of the business and the stuff that was kept kayfabe and so secret for so long, even though the business had been exposed to some degree long before he started doing that podcast, but then all these wrestling podcasts started coming along, and we've got one too, so talk about oversaturating the market. We're doing our part. So do you think that's hurt or helped? Because like for older fans like me to hear him tell stories about Mid-South and Northern Crocodile, love it.
I love it too, yeah.
But do you think that it turns off young people because they're like, well, what's this a bunch of bullshit? Why should I watch it?
I think it does have a negative effect. But then again, if you have somebody, well, just take for instance, people watch movies. Okay, all of a sudden, just like my son, he always loved horror movies, but they scared him to death when he was young. So Freddy Krueger, got him a DVD, I think it might have been VHS at the time, showed him the making of it. So once he saw that, never again word. He loved every horror movie out there because he understands it's just an act. So I think in long term, people start accepting. I think it's still accepted because you know when you go to maybe 15,000 people out there, you know they're smart. They know what the business is. But it all falls back on the promotion, the wrestlers, and everybody to put that show on to the point that for that hour and a half to 2 hours, it's believable.
Yeah, the suspension of disbelief. Yeah, and that's one thing. That's why I love going to wrestling in Charlotte, because people cosplay, they dress up like their favorite wrestlers. I mean, people really enjoy it. And from the time that bell rings, if you hear people chit-chatting in the crowd, they're discussing what they're seeing as if it's real. You know, and that's why I love it. And anytime you hear me say old school crowd, that's not a knock on young people. Because I'm telling you what, in Charlotte, from the little bitty kids that have to come with their parents to the 20-somethings to, you know, older, you know, useless people like me, it's a very diverse crowd. But I think that might be unique to Charlotte because a lot of times I look at like, when my wife and I went to the AEW show, I was joking with her. I said, I'll give you $5 if there's more than 100 women in this entire crowd. And I said, but they can't. I'm not. You know what? I'm not going to get into the details. but what I was saying is like WWE. I saw a diverse crowd, a lot of families, a lot of young people. So that gave me hope. But when I went to AEW, it was more of a sausage fest. You know what I mean? So when we started the AIWF Mid-Atlantic Instagram page, I reached out to my niece in Phoenix, who is 16 years old. I was like, help me with this, help guide me. And she's like, why? And I said, because the problem with wrestling right now, as I see it, we don't have any kids interested.
Right.
Teenagers, you know, I mean, teenagers that'll soon be 20-somethings with their own disposable income. And that's when, you know, you remember being in your early 20s. Oh, yeah. That's when you money burned a hole in your pocket. You spent everything you've had as quick as you made it. Most people did. You know, and that's what we want to hook them now. So 5 years from now, they'll be paying customers.
Well, you also got to understand. I think what started, especially with WWE, when they got away from and started going to the so-called PG era, because the hottest time they ever had was back with you know, DX.
Yeah. Again, the late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s.
But if you remember right, though, Bill, at the end of the TV14 era was sometime between like 05 and 07. And they have really done some raunchy stuff. 03, 04, the Katie Vick thing comes to mind. And Triple H is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And I hope he's well. I hadn't heard anything about him. But he's one of my favorite wrestlers. That was completely tasteless. And they had done some other stuff with Gene Snitsky and Kane and Lita and Shawn Michaels and around the 04 05 area that I thought had just gotten so raunchy. When they dialed it back to PG, I was happy. You know, because I remember thinking, if I have kids, I don't want them watching this shit.
But you got to understand too is you're a wrestling fan, so that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
But you do have. You got to look at something like the ages from say 18 to 26.
Yeah,
those are something you want to try to get a hold of. Yeah, I admit. But you can. Then again, we always had the same thing back in our time too. Is the parents bringing their kids out to our shows.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, there was a few years there we were probably rivaling ECW, the most violent shows out there.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know that was we always had to let parents know that what's going on these shows. So, but
we scared a few families off back in those days, with all that blood and guts. Yeah.
So and that's the one thing I think missing in WWE right now is when somebody gets thrown into a cage numerous times. The reality of doing that, shouldn't there be some kind of blood on it? It's reality. I mean, so just to say no, it's not. To me, that takes away from some of the reality that you're trying to bring across to everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, AEW, they may be going too far extreme with it, maybe.
Yeah, well, they got rid of that guy with the pizza cutter thing, and they lost the Domino's sponsorship because of that too.
Yeah, but so it's going to be tough. But I still The building block, we've got to get the right things. We've got to get the competition out there. Because remember, it was so many years there, it was just WWE. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that hurt it a lot too.
Right, now they got the AEW. And I really said we had Ring of Honor, but we don't have Ring of Honor anymore. Depends on what AEW does with it. Hope they'll just allow them to continue to run their shows, but fund them better and stuff like that. So maybe we'll have 3 out there.
We might. We'll have to wait and see. It's definitely a wait and see thing. I would like to see at some point, because it would, the way society is now in social media, which, you really can't pay attention to social media, and that's why Mid-Atlantic Wrestling doesn't follow that many people on Instagram, because I'm there to put our guys over and advertise our matches, and I don't really care what you think about politics and none of that shit.
Yeah,
I'm there to advertise wrestling, and I'm shoring up all my social media like that, because people on social media are so mean and just will try to tear everything down from the safety of behind their keyboard, that you really have to ignore it. But you want to use it because it is a very good tool. We don't have to poster that much anymore because of social media. So it's a great tool, but I wish we could figure out a way to bring kids in, because it's not like the 90s where you could parade Sable out there next to nothing. You do that, you're going to get eaten alive today,
Especially in the Indies, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, I'm listening. All right, it's a great idea. I'm telling you, it'll work, and it'll be good for views, I think. You look,
I get.
Okay. The price is right. Yeah. The price is right. Yeah, the price is right.
It's like a brain.
I've always been the type that didn't like characters.
Yeah.
But I think for the younger ones, I remember back, it had to be in the mid-90s when Creeping Death started. And he had that gimmick that was just hit with the kids.
Yeah.
Before he went to the different attitudes and stuff like that, he was a hit with the kids. And we had a few other guys that were a hit with kids, especially in the Elkin area.
Remember the Rooster and Shady the Clown? Those were huge hits with the kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are some things like that would bring in more kids. But a lot of times the kids are not going to be interested because they're on video games now. So it's just like, it's hard.
I know, man, and those video games are produced by Hollywood producers and directors, man. That's tough competition out there.
Really tough.
But who knows? Maybe we can figure out the magic formula to get the kids back. We're trying some new things here in Mount Airy to get the word out about our shows and stuff like that. So we'll see. But if you're ever in the Mount Airy area, we run here once or twice a month. Veterans Park. If you want some good family entertainment, yes, it's wrestling. It's violent. But it's not too over the top, man. We try to keep it just right there at an even keel, and it's great entertainment. Always has been since the beginning. It's certainly not like the 90s.
This is a good time now. The weather's changing. It's feeling good. Yeah. It's not as cold because that building over gets pretty cold in the wintertime.
Oh yeah.
I noticed you guys changed your start times.
We ran up the start times last month, and we put in propane heaters all the way around the floor, and so it was tolerable in there last month. It was still cold, but it was tolerable, So, but anyway, folks, Bill, you got anything else we could cover before we go here? I think we've.
I'm gonna tell you one story.
Okay, all right.
This is a show we done in Bradshaw, West Virginia.
Oh boy.
And this was a very small town. We're talking about war. We're talking about smaller than that.
Yeah.
And we had a show in the fire department, volunteer fire department. and there was a match between Rick Diesel and the sheriff of the town. Apparently they wasn't getting along very well. Well, so they had a match. It was, you know, he challenged the sheriff to a match. Well, the sheriff showed up, got in the ring, took his gun off, laid it right there on the side, and I said, we don't need that. Well, you know, we're fine because there's another deputy on the side. Well, they had the match and all that stuff, and Diesel couldn't quite get the hang of everything that's going on.
Because the cop was using those like judo takedown moves.
So after about 10 minutes, Diesel just got fed up. Next thing you know, he was out of the ring, pulling that pistol out of that holster and pointing it at the cop.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the world's going on? Next thing I know, then he got swarmed by the cops. The funniest thing about this whole story was when they got him, he dropped the gun right there on the side of the ring. Cop was handcuffed in Diesel, and Diesel was trying to get his teeth to pick up that gun. I always like to keep my straight face, but I'm gonna tell you what, when I saw that, I just about broke.
Yeah, I remember that show.
But it was a great time up there.
Yeah, and when they took him to jail, they cracked the window because it was warm that night.
Yeah.
And he's screaming at the townspeople as he's being taken to jail, saying he's been wrongfully arrested or something like that. There might even be some video of that in the archives.
I hope so. It'd be great.
But anyway, Bill, it's been great having you here on Straight Shooting.
Enjoyed it. Good seeing you again.
Good seeing you too. You gonna stay for the show tonight?
Most of it, probably. I'll try to stay stuff. You know, I'm getting older now, so I got my bedtime.
I understand, believe me. All right, folks, that's it for this edition of Straight Shooting. Stay here on the AIWF Network. We will have more for you. For referee Bill Holliday, I'm Mad Matt Carter. And until next time, so long for now.